I was lying in a hospital bed, pee in my arm, pain curling through my side like a hot wire, when the phone call came. We really wish we could help, but we have Elton John tickets tonight. Second row. It's non-refundable. My mother's voice was casual, like she was declining a dinner invite, not refusing to watch her 2 4-year-old grandchildren while I underwent emergency surgery. Then came the next line, one that would carve itself into my memory forever. You always create these crises at the worst time. Honestly, you're becoming a nuisance. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the ceiling for a full minute, not crying, not panicking, just numb. Then I took a breath, grabbed my phone with trembling fingers, and started scrolling for a last-minute babysitter app from my hospital bed that night. While my parents danced under stadium lights with my sister, a stranger read my kids a bedtime story, and something in me snapped, not in rage, but in clarity. This was no longer about a single night. This was about a lifetime of being treated like a backup plan. So I cut them off. Financially, emotionally, permanently. Or so I thought. Because exactly 14 days later, someone knocked on my door. And what happened next changed everything. Have you ever realized, mid-crisis, that your family would choose tickets over you? I used to believe that family, real family, shows up when it matters. Turns out, I was raised to believe that only because I was the one always showing up. My name's Jenna, 38, single mom. I have 2 beautiful twin daughters, Mia and Lily, both with wild curls and imaginations twice their size. Their father left before their 2nd birthday. He said twins were too much pressure and that he wasn't built for the stay-at-home life. He wasn't built for the late-night feedings or the tantrums either. So it was just us, me and the girls. And for a while, that was enough. 2 years ago, when my job offered remote work, I made a choice I thought would bring us all closer. I moved back to my hometown, back near my parents, back near my sister, Rachel, back to support. Or so I thought. It made sense on paper. Lower rent, free childcare help, familiar community. Everyone said, it takes a village, but no one tells you what to do when your village looks at you like you're the problem. Growing up, Rachel was the golden child, top grades, cheer captain, daddy's pride and joy. I was quieter, more creative. I loved books, baking, and getting lost in watercolor. My parents didn't dislike me. They just tolerated me. And as adults, not much changed. Rachel married a dentist and lived in a lakeside house with 3 bathrooms and 2 nannies. My parents visited her every weekend, posted about her new kitchen remodel like it was their own. Me, I got a side hug and passive-aggressive advice. Maybe if you hadn't rushed into motherhood, are you sure you're feeding them the right way? You know, your sister would have hired a nanny by now. Still, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I drove them to appointments, paid their internet bill when they forgot, even sent them money monthly just to help, even though I was budgeting every grocery trip down to the last coupon. Because deep down, I still believed, maybe this time, they'll be there when I need them. That belief shattered the night my doctor called. My abdominal pain wasn't just postpartum stress or gas, like my mother insisted. It was an urgent ovarian complication that needed surgery within 48 hours, max. I had no time, no backup, no partner, and only one option: ask the people I trusted most to care for my girls. I made the call. I'll never forget the silence after I explained the situation. Then came the sigh, the long, theatrical kind. We've already made plans, my mom said. Elton John, with Rachel. It's her birthday week. I told her it was surgery, that I didn't have anyone else. It's always something with you. She snapped. You're exhausting. That word, exhausting, as if asking for help while facing anesthesia and stitches made me a burden. I hung up without saying goodbye. Then I stared at my screen. 10% battery, 2 small voices in the next room laughing at cartoons, and no one left to call. I opened a babysitting app, hired the only available sitter within a 10-mile radius, and sent her the front door code. Then I signed my hospital release form and cried silently as the nurse wheeled me away. The surgery went well, but something inside me didn't come back from that operating room. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pain. It was resolve. The next morning, I texted my landlord to change the emergency contact, called the preschool and removed both my parents and Rachel from the pickup list, canceled the monthly transfer I had been sending for years, blocked their numbers. No goodbye, no explanation. I didn't owe them that, because when people show you where you stand, believe them. The girls were too young to notice the shift. They still drew crayon hearts for Grandma, not knowing Grandma chose a concert over their care, and I didn't correct them. Some truths can wait, but boundaries, they can't. I thought that was the end of the story. But sometimes, when you finally draw the line, the people who crossed it come back, and not always for the reasons you expect. 14 days. That's how long it took before someone came knocking. It was a Wednesday morning. Mia and Lily were building a Lego zoo on the living room floor. I was finally starting to move without wincing from the incision site when I heard the knock, 3 polite, measured taps. I opened the door and froze. My father, not with flowers, not with soup, no apology in his eyes, just a forced smile and a manila envelope under one arm. Your mother slipped at the concert venue, hips bad. She's in recovery now, he said, like he was giving me a weather update. Then he added, almost casually, we were wondering if you could help cover the rehab cost. You know, just a bit. You've always been good with money. I didn't say a word, not because I was shocked, because I wasn't. Instead, I stepped aside and let him in, not out of kindness, but curiosity. I wanted to hear what justification they'd cooked up. I wanted to know how deep this delusion ran. He sat at the kitchen table like nothing had changed, like 2 weeks ago. I hadn't begged for their help and been called a nuisance, like my daughters hadn't been put to bed by a stranger while their family danced to Tiny Dancer. He pushed the envelope toward me. Inside, a copy of a medical bill. A handwritten note in my mother's curvy script. We know things got tense, but we're still family. Please do what's right. I folded the letter neatly, set it aside. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up a PDF. It was a spreadsheet. 5 years of monthly transfers from me to them. Rent, utilities, medical co-pays, grocery loans never returned. Total just over $38. $100. I turned the screen toward him. I've already done what's right, I said. He didn't even look at the number. He just scoffed and said, you're being emotional again. That word, again. As if empathy were a flaw, as if asking for reciprocity made me unstable. I told him I wouldn't pay another cent. Not now. Not ever. He stood up, nostrils flaring. Your sister warned us this would happen, he muttered. She said you were pulling away, acting superior. I didn't believe her, but maybe we were wrong about you. Wrong about me? I laughed, quietly, bitterly. No, I said. You just finally met the version of me that doesn't beg for crumbs. After he left, I expected silence. But Rachel called 3 hours later, voice high-pitched with rage. She launched straight into accusations. You embarrassed Dad. Mom's in pain. And you're playing power games. You think just because you have twins and a trauma story, you're better than us? That last one, it stuck. Because yes, I had trauma. But I never used it as a weapon. I used it to survive. Still, I listened, let her rant. And when she paused for breath, I said, you left me alone, in a hospital bed, with 2 toddlers at home. For a concert, you don't get to guilt me now. She hung up. That night, I took action. I printed the spreadsheet of every dollar I'd ever sent my parents, attached the hospital invoice, attached the voicemail from my mother, and finally, a photo Rachel had posted from the concert, front row, smiling, drink in hand, captioned, family over everything. I packaged it all into a PDF and emailed it to the extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, church friends, old neighbors. Subject line: in case you were wondering why I've been distant. I didn't add a note, didn't defend myself, just the facts, just the timeline. Let them form their own conclusions. The fallout was quiet, but meaningful. A cousin emailed, "I always sensed something wasn't right. I'm sorry you went through that." An aunt offered to babysit. A family friend sent me a $100 gift card and wrote, "For the strong mother doing it alone, with more grace than anyone gives her credit for." But the most surprising response? Silence. No retaliation. No apology. Just silence from my parents and Rachel. You know what that silence told me? It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was strategy. They were regrouping, waiting for me to calm down, to miss them, to get over it. They underestimated one thing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't wounded. I was done. They thought I'd fold, that I'd fall back into old habits. But the more they tried to pressure me, the stronger I stood. And when they made their next move, they didn't expect I had one final truth left to reveal. A week passed, then 2. No calls, no messages, not even a snide text from Rachel. At first, I thought maybe they'd finally gotten the message that the silence was surrender. I was wrong. The next escalation came not with noise, but with paperwork. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Mia and Lily were at preschool, and I was folding laundry when I heard the mail slot clink. I almost ignored it until I saw the envelope. Thick, certified, from a law firm. Inside, a formal request for reimbursement. For what? Apparently, my mother's physical therapy bills, with a bold claim that I had previously committed to supporting her medical care. They were trying to turn my past generosity into a legal obligation. There was no lawsuit filed. Not yet. Just a veiled threat, crafted in lawyer speak. Given the history of consistent financial assistance and oral agreements between parties, our client reserves the right to pursue reimbursement should resolution not be reached amicably. It was laughable, except it wasn't, because I knew them. They weren't just trying to guilt me now. They were trying to set precedent, to make it look like I had failed them. I called Claire, a family lawyer recommended by the Women's Legal Center downtown. She read the letter in 5 minutes and shook her head. "This is pressure, not litigation. They're hoping you'll cave before they have to prove anything." I asked her what we could do. She smiled and said, "Show them who they're messing with." That weekend, I compiled everything. Bank statements showing transfers labeled as gifts. The original voicemail from my mother calling me a nuisance. Screenshots of text messages that showed no prior agreement. And most importantly, an affidavit from my former financial planner stating that all funds given were voluntary, not contractual. Claire drafted a formal response. It was polite, it was professional, and it was deadly in its precision. It ended with one simple line: "Should your client pursue this further, we are prepared to file for harassment and emotional damages related to intentional distress during a medical crisis." We mailed it certified, and then we waited. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, Rachel showed up at my front door. She didn't knock, just stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses on like she was shielding herself from the truth. "Wow," she said, "you really went full scorched earth, didn't you?" I leaned against the doorway, calm. "No, Rachel, I just stopped cleaning up your ashes." She huffed, rolled her eyes. "You think this makes you the good guy? You're tearing the family apart." I laughed, short, sharp. "No, the family was already torn. I just stopped taping it together with money and silence." She tried a different tactic then, the guilt card. "Mom's miserable. Dad won't even look at her. He blames her for losing you." I said nothing. So she tried one more. "You know you were always the dramatic one, right? Ever since we were kids, you always wanted a scene." That one hit different, because she wasn't wrong about the drama, but she was wrong about the source. It was never me creating the storm. It was me trying to survive it, while everyone else pretended the sky was clear. Before she left, Rachel muttered, "You'll regret this one day." I replied without missing a beat. "The only thing I regret is how long it took me to stop begging for love that came with conditions. Then I closed the door, slowly, quietly. Because when you're finally at peace, you don't slam doors. You seal them. A few days later, I had coffee with Ava, the babysitter who stayed with my kids during the surgery. We'd kept in touch. She was sweet, responsible, studying child psychology. I told her what had happened, the letter, the visit. She shook her head and said, "It's amazing how family thinks they own you just because they were the first ones to fail you." I felt that in my bones. Then she paused and added, "By the way, you should really check your credit. Some families don't fight with lawyers, they fight with your identity." I froze, because suddenly, a memory surfaced. A credit card I never applied for in college, a random late notice, my mother saying she'd handle it. I was 22, trusting, busy. I never looked deeper. But now I needed to know. That night, I pulled my credit report, and there it was. A lingering account opened under my name, still tied to an old address, their address, with a $3,800 balance. Last payment? 9 months ago. I printed it, highlighted it, and I smiled. Not because I was glad, but because now I had leverage. Not revenge, not malice, just the truth. They thought they could rewrite the story, but they forgot I still had the receipts. And I was finally ready to show the world what they'd tried to hide for years. I didn't sleep that night, not out of fear, but from clarity. That old credit card account, opened in my name, it was no longer just a financial oversight. It was evidence of manipulation, of control, of betrayal. And it wasn't just about money. It was about the years they'd painted me as unstable, irresponsible, dramatic, while quietly benefiting from my silence. That silence? It ended now. The next morning, I filed a fraud report with the credit bureau. The process wasn't easy. Lots of forms, ID verification, and time-consuming calls, but I didn't flinch. Then I reached out to Claire, my lawyer, and sent her every screenshot, every bank statement, and a copy of the newly pulled credit report. Her response? "This changes everything. We're no longer playing defense." She helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter to my parents' attorney, not just to shut down their reimbursement claim, but to begin documenting a pattern of financial abuse. Attached were records of the unauthorized account, proof of monthly transfers from my account over the past 5 years, evidence that the so-called agreement to support them was fabricated, and a closing paragraph that I asked her to include, word for word. "My client does not owe compensation for boundaries you failed to respect, nor does she owe silence for pain you refuse to acknowledge. Further communication will be regarded as harassment and responded to accordingly." 2 days later, I received a reply, not from their attorney, from my sister, an email, short, snide. "So you're turning this into a public show now? Fine. Hope your kids enjoy growing up with no grandparents. You always wanted to be the victim. Now you're the star of your own sad little movie." I stared at the screen, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt free. Because when someone accuses you of seeking attention after years of abandonment, what they're really saying is, "You're telling the truth, and I don't like how it makes me look." I didn't respond. Instead, I did one final thing. I wrote a letter, not to them, but to myself. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and I wrote, "To the woman who survived her own family, you're not crazy. You're not cold. You're not cruel for saying no after a lifetime of saying yes. They used your kindness. They turned your reliability into a resource. They framed your boundaries as betrayal. But now, you are choosing peace. You are choosing truth. And most of all, you are choosing your children, who will one day understand the strength it took to walk away, not with revenge, but with receipts, with dignity, and with zero apologies. Love." Me. That letter never got mailed. But it didn't need to. It lived in my drawer, right beside the evidence that freed me. 2 weeks later, the credit bureau confirmed the fraud. The debt was cleared. My score restored. It was over. Legally, financially, emotionally. And in that quiet closure, I felt something shift. For years, I thought I needed a confession to heal, or an apology, or maybe just one I'm sorry that would never come. But the truth is, closure doesn't always need permission. Sometimes, it's just a locked door and a life you build on the other side. Have you ever protected people who would never protect you? Stayed quiet for the sake of peace that never included you? Let me be clear. You do not owe loyalty to those who only show up when you're useful. And walking away is not cruelty. It's clarity. If this feels familiar, if you've ever been called a nuisance just for needing help, drop A in the comments. That's your boundary now. Brick by brick, you're allowed to build something stronger. They thought I'd collapse, that I'd come crawling back, that without them, I'd fall apart. But here's the twist they didn't see coming. I didn't fall. I grew. Some people think the end of a family bond is loud, filled with shouting, courtroom scenes, and slammed doors. But mine ended in quiet mornings, in fresh coffee, in 2 little girls laughing over cereal, in peace so deep, it almost felt suspicious at first. And then it felt like home. I didn't send out a final message. I didn't tell them I forgave them, because forgiveness isn't always something you say. Sometimes, it's something you live. And I was finally living on my terms. We moved to a new place, still in the same town, just 1 zip code over. Enough distance to breathe, close enough to remember why I needed that breath in the first place. Our new house wasn't big, but it had a garden and sunlight that hit the kitchen table just right in the mornings, and no memories lurking in the walls. The girls painted their room sky blue. I let them choose, no corrections, no comments, just freedom. Ava, the babysitter who showed up when no one else would, became more than a helper. She became a friend, a steady presence. She now babysits regularly, and the girls ask about her when she's not around. One night, Mia asked, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa come anymore?" I paused, then said, "Because sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind, and when people stop being kind, we love them from far away." She nodded, accepted it. Children understand boundaries better than most adults. I started writing again, just small pieces at first, a journal entry, a memory I wanted to reclaim. Then one day, I opened a blank Word doc and wrote the title, The Inconvenient Daughter. It was the name they gave me, without ever saying it aloud, and I was finally ready to take it back. One evening, while cleaning out a drawer, I found an old photo, me, Rachel, and our parents, Christmas 1992, matching sweaters, plastic smiles. I stared at that photo for a long time, not with bitterness, with understanding. I used to think I wasn't enough for them. Now I know they were never enough for me. Let me tell you something. If you've ever been called too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, maybe, just maybe, you were surrounded by people too small to hold your truth. And walking away, that isn't failure, that's evolution. Some stories don't have a villain, just people who chose comfort over character, silence over support, convenience over connection. And when that happens, you don't have to fight to be understood. You just have to walk quietly, strategically, powerfully. Now, when someone knocks at my door, I don't flinch. I don't brace. Because the people who show up now, they see me, not as a burden, not as an obligation, but as a woman who stood up when everyone else stepped back. If you've ever begged for help and been met with silence, if you've sacrificed until you were empty, only to be called dramatic when you finally needed something back, please hear me now. You are not too much. You are not wrong. And you are not alone. You are just surrounded by people who were never taught how to love someone strong. Drop it in the comments if you've ever had to rebuild after your own family let you fall. Share your turning point, your boundary moment, your breakthrough. And if you believe in quiet justice, in emotional clarity, and in stories that show how the underestimated woman wins. Subscribe, because here we tell the truth, not the one they approve of, but the one that finally sets you free. They called me a nuisance, said I was trouble, said I was too much. Now I am too wise, too strong, too free to ever ask again.